There is a question that echoes through every human heart, across every generation, in every corner of the world. It's whispered in moments of longing, shouted in moments of desperation, and pondered in the quiet hours before dawn. How do I get what I want? Not just the surface desires, not just the fleeting wishes that come and go like clouds across a summer sky, but the deep things, the real things: peace, purpose, freedom, fulfillment, the life you know somewhere in the depths of your soul that you were meant to live. The ancient Stoics understood something profound about this question, something that modern life, with all its urgency and noise, has caused us to forget. They understood that getting what you want is not about chasing. It's not about forcing. It's not about manipulating the universe or bending reality to your will. It's about alignment. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally attracts what they seek because they've done the inner work to prepare for it.
Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who ruled Rome yet sought wisdom in his private journals, wrote, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts, not on your circumstances, not on what you have or don't have, but on the quality of your thoughts." This is where it begins. Over the next hours together, we're going to explore a path, an ancient path that leads to a modern destination. We'll walk through 10 essential lessons, each one building on the last, each one revealing a piece of the puzzle that, when complete, shows you exactly how to get whatever you want. The Stoic way. Not through aggression, but through clarity. Not through desperation, but through discipline. Not through wishing, but through becoming. Take a breath, let the world quiet around you, and let's begin.
Chapter 1. The Power of Asking, the Forgotten Art. There's an old wisdom found in texts both sacred and secular that says, "Ask and you shall receive." Simple words, profound truth. But here's what most people miss. Most people never truly ask. They wish, they hope, they daydream, they imagine vague, shapeless futures where things are somehow better, but they don't ask. Asking is different. Asking is specific. Asking is intentional. Asking requires you to know what you want clearly enough to name it, to define it, to speak it into existence with words that have weight and meaning. The Stoics were masters of clarity. They believed that confused thinking leads to confused living, that if you cannot articulate what you want, you cannot possibly move toward it with any real power. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher who served as advisor to emperors, wrote, "When a man does not know what harbor he is making for, no wind is the right wind." Read that again slowly. When you don't know where you're going, every wind blows you off course. Every opportunity becomes a distraction. Every choice becomes a gamble. You drift, rudderless, at the mercy of circumstances. But when you ask, when you define your harbor clearly, specifically, with absolute precision, then suddenly the right winds reveal themselves. Opportunities align. Choices become obvious. The path appears, not because it was hidden, but because you finally have the eyes to see it. Let me tell you a story, a metaphor that illustrates this perfectly. Imagine you're standing at the edge of an ocean, a vast, infinite ocean that contains everything you could possibly want. Wealth is there, love is there, knowledge is there, peace is there, success, health, joy, purpose, it's all there, waiting in that limitless expanse of water. And you're holding a teaspoon. You dip the teaspoon into the ocean and pull out a tiny amount of water. Then you look at your teaspoon and say, "Is this all there is? Is this all the universe has to offer me?" But the ocean looks back and asks, "Is this all you brought? Is a teaspoon all you're capable of carrying?" This is the tragedy of most human lives. Not that the universe is stingy, not that opportunity is scarce, not that success is reserved for the lucky few. The tragedy is that we show up with teaspoons when we could bring buckets. We ask for crumbs when we could ask for the feast. We settle for fragments when we could claim the whole.
Why? Fear, conditioning, the small, limiting beliefs that whisper in our ears, don't ask for too much, don't reach too high, stay small, stay safe, be grateful for your teaspoon. But the Stoics rejected this thinking entirely. They believed that human beings are capable of greatness, that we contain within us a spark of the divine, a rational soul that can comprehend the universe and align with its natural order. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The first step in getting what you want is asking for it. Not wishing, not hoping, asking. With clarity, with specificity, with the full force of your conscious mind directed toward a defined outcome. What do you want? Not what the society say you should want, not what your parents expect, not what looks good on social media. What do you want? Can you name it? Can you describe it in detail? Can you see it, feel it, taste it in your mind's eye? If you can't, then this is where your work begins, because the universe, nature, the gods, fate, whatever you choose to call the organizing principle of reality, cannot deliver something to you that you yourself cannot define. Clarity is power. Asking is the first act of creation. And here's what happens when you truly ask, when you define your desire with crystal precision. Something shifts in your mind, in your nervous system, in the very way you perceive reality. You begin to notice things you never noticed before. Opportunities that were always there suddenly become visible. Connections form, ideas emerge, resources appear. Not through magic, through focus. When you ask clearly, your brain begins working on the problem unconsciously. Your reticular activating system, the part of your brain that filters what's important from what's not, suddenly flags everything related to your goal as important. You start seeing paths where you once saw only obstacles. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature. Modern psychology calls it goal orientation. But the principle is the same. Define what you want, and the mind begins organizing reality around that definition.
So ask yourself now, in this moment, are you showing up to life with a teaspoon or a bucket? Are you asking for what you truly want or settling for what seems safe? The ocean is infinite. The question is only, what have you brought to carry it? Pause. Let that sit. Asking is not begging. It's not pleading. It's not desperate. Asking is a declaration, a statement of intent, a way of saying to the universe, I am ready, I am open, I am here to receive. But asking alone is not enough. The Stoics were not dreamers. They were practical philosophers. They knew that asking must be followed by action, by discipline, by the daily work of becoming someone capable of handling what they've asked for. And that's where we turn next.
Chapter 2. The Stoic Way of Desire. There's a misconception about Stoicism that needs to be addressed immediately. Many people hear Stoic and think emotionless, cold, detached from desire, a life of renunciation where you want nothing and feel nothing. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Stoics were not against desire, they were against disordered desire, against wanting things that would destroy you, against chasing externals that you cannot control while neglecting the internals that determine your character. Epictetus, who was born a slave and became one of the most respected philosophers in Rome, taught his students a fundamental distinction. There are things which are within our power, and there are things which are beyond our power. Within our power, our thoughts, our choices, our responses, our character, our effort. Beyond our power, other people's opinions, the weather, the economy, whether we get sick, whether we succeed or fail despite our best efforts. The Stoic way of desire is this: want fiercely what is within your control. Pursue it with everything you have, but accept with equanimity whatever happens that is beyond your control.
This is not resignation. This is strategic wisdom. Because here's what happens when you desire things beyond your control. You become enslaved. You become anxious. You become fragile. Your peace depends on factors you cannot influence, which means you have no real peace at all. But when you desire virtue, when you desire to be courageous, just, wise, and disciplined, when you desire to show up fully, to give your best effort, to live with integrity, that is entirely within your control. No one can take that from you. No circumstance can prevent it. And here's the paradox the Stoics discovered. When you stop desperately chasing external outcomes and instead focus on becoming excellent in character and action, the external outcomes often come anyway. Not because you've manipulated the universe, but because you've become the kind of person who naturally attracts success. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Think about the desires that dominate modern life. The desire for wealth, the desire for fame on social media, the desire to be seen, admired, envied. These are not evil desires, but they are dangerous when they become your master, because they are all externals. You cannot control them. You can work toward them, but you cannot guarantee them. And so you live in constant anxiety, constant comparison, constant disappointment when reality doesn't match your expectations. The Stoic flips this script entirely. Instead of asking, "How can I get rich?" the Stoic asks, "How can I become excellent at my craft?" Instead of, "How can I get famous?" the Stoic asks, "How can I create value that serves others?" Instead of, "How can I get people to like me?" the Stoic asks, "How can I become someone worthy of respect?" starting with self-respect. Do you see the difference? One approach makes you a beggar, dependent on external validation. The other makes you sovereign, grounded in your own excellence. Seneca wrote in his letters, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Real wealth is wanting what you have. Real freedom is needing nothing you don't have. Real power is controlling yourself rather than trying to control circumstances.
But again, this doesn't mean you become passive. It doesn't mean you stop pursuing goals or building things or creating value in the world. It means you pursue the right things in the right way. Let me give you a modern example. Two people want to build a successful business. One is driven by the external desire for money and status. The other is driven by the internal desire to solve problems and serve customers excellently. Both work hard. Both face obstacles. But when setbacks come, and they will come, the first person becomes bitter, anxious, desperate, because their identity is tied to the outcome. Their worth depends on whether they make it. The second person, they stay steady. They learn from failure. They adapt. They persist. Because their satisfaction comes from the quality of their effort, not just the outcome. They're building excellence, and that is always within their control. Ironically, which one do you think is more likely to actually succeed? The anxious, desperate one,
or the calm, persistent one. The Stoics understood that peace and power come from the same source, aligning your desires with what you can actually control.
This is how you purify desire. This is how you want things without being enslaved by them. You ask, is this within my control? If it is, pursue it with everything you have. If it isn't, do what you can, then accept what comes. Epictetus said it perfectly. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. So yes, desire, want, pursue, build, create, but do it from a place of inner freedom, not desperate neediness. Do it because you are excellent, not because you need to prove you're excellent. Do it because it's the right thing to do, not because you cannot live without the result. This is the Stoic way of desire. And when you master it, something remarkable happens. You begin to get what you want precisely because you no longer desperately need it. You become magnetic because you are whole.
You attract abundance because you've already found abundance within yourself. The universe doesn't give you what you wish for. It gives you what you're prepared for. And the prepared person is the one who has done the inner work, who has aligned their desires with their character, who wants the right things for the right reasons. Take a moment and examine your own desires. What do you want? Really want? And more importantly, are you wanting things that are within your control, or are you enslaved to externals? This distinction will determine everything that follows.
Chapter 3. The Formula for Receiving. There's a process that begins the moment you truly ask for something. A mental process, an emotional process, a spiritual process, if you believe in such things. The ancient wisdom traditions talk about it. The Stoics understood it. Modern psychology is beginning to confirm it. When you ask clearly, specifically, with genuine intent, something shifts. I cannot tell you exactly how it works. Neither could the ancients, not in mechanical terms, but they knew that it works. Ask, and the receiving begins. Not immediately, not always in the way you expect, but it begins. Here's what the Stoics understood that we often miss. The universe doesn't give you what you wish for. It gives you what you are prepared to receive. Think about that. You can ask for wealth, but if you haven't developed the skills, discipline, and mindset of a wealthy person, money will slip through your fingers, even if you stumble upon it. You can ask for love, but if you haven't done the work of becoming someone capable of healthy intimacy, you'll sabotage every good relationship that comes your way. You can ask for success, but if you haven't built the character to handle pressure, visibility, and responsibility, success will crush you.
The formula for receiving is not complicated, but it is demanding. It requires alignment. Your thoughts must align with your goals. Your emotions must align with your vision. Your actions must align with your intentions. When these three, thought, emotion, action, harmonize, receiving becomes inevitable. Let me break this down. First, thought alignment. The Stoics were obsessed with the quality of thinking. Marcus Aurelius's entire Meditations is essentially a journal of him correcting his own thoughts, reminding himself of what's true, redirecting his mind toward clarity. Thought alignment means this: your conscious mind must consistently hold the vision of what you want. Not obsessively, not anxiously, but clearly and consistently. Every day, you remind yourself, this is what I'm building. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm becoming. You don't let doubt cloud your vision.
You don't let fear distort it. You don't let other people's limitations become your limitations. You think clearly, you think consistently, you think with purpose. Second, emotional alignment. This is where most people fail.
They think about their goals, but their emotions tell a different story. They say they want success, but they feel unworthy. They say they want love, but they feel unlovable. They say they want wealth, but they feel guilty about money. The Stoics understood that emotions follow beliefs. If you believe you're capable, you'll feel confident. If you believe you're not good enough, you'll feel anxious. So emotional alignment requires examining your beliefs, questioning them, updating them. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Your emotions are real, but the beliefs causing them might not be true. And when you realize that, you can begin to feel differently. You can cultivate the emotional state of someone who has already received what they're asking for. Gratitude instead of desperation. Confidence instead of anxiety. Calm anticipation instead of frantic worry. This isn't fake it until you make it. This is genuine inner work. This is becoming emotionally prepared to receive. Third, action alignment. This is non-negotiable. You cannot ask for a harvest if you never plant seeds. You cannot ask for strength if you never lift heavy things. You cannot ask for wisdom if you never study or reflect. The Stoics were men of action. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. Seneca advised emperors and wrote prolifically. Epictetus taught students daily. They didn't just think philosophical thoughts, they lived philosophical lives. Action alignment means your daily behaviors must reflect your stated goals. If you want health, you eat well and exercise. If you want knowledge, you read and study. If you want relationships, you show up for people. If you want success, you do the work. Not occasionally, not when you feel like it, consistently, disciplined, with the steady persistence of water wearing down stone. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about others, unless you are doing so for some benefit to the common good." In other words, stop talking about what you want and start doing what's necessary to get it. When thought, emotion, and action align, when what you think, what you feel, and what you do are all pointing in the same direction, receiving becomes automatic. Not because you've tricked the universe, because you've prepared yourself. You've become the kind of person who naturally attracts what you're asking for. Here's a metaphor the Stoics would appreciate. You cannot plant an apple seed and expect oranges. The seed contains the blueprint for what it will become. You can water it, give it sunlight, protect it from harm, but you cannot change what it fundamentally is. In the same way, who you are at your core determines what you receive.
If you are disciplined, you will receive the rewards of discipline. If you are scattered, you will receive the consequences of distraction. If you are generous, you will receive the reciprocity that generosity creates. If you are bitter, you will receive the isolation that bitterness brings. The universe is not moral in a simplistic way. Bad things happen to good people. Good things happen to bad people. Life is complex. But over time, patterns emerge. Character creates consequences. Who you are shapes what you receive. So the formula is simple. Ask clearly, align your thoughts, align your emotions, align your actions. Then trust the process. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature. They believed that when you align yourself with reason, with virtue, with the natural order of things, you flow with reality rather than fighting against it. And when you flow with reality, you find that it carries you toward what you need. Not always what you want in the moment, but what you need for your growth, your development, your ultimate fulfillment. Are your actions aligned with what you say you want? Or is there a gap between your words and your life? That gap is where dreams go to die. Close it daily through small, consistent actions that prove to yourself and the universe that you're serious. And then watch what happens.
Chapter 4. The Mind as a Magnet. The ancient Stoics believed something that modern neuroscience is only now beginning to confirm. Your mind shapes your reality. Not through mystical laws of attraction, not through magical thinking, but through the powerful, practical mechanisms of attention, perception, and action. Where your mind goes, your life follows. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Think about that image. Your soul, your essential self, takes on the hue of whatever you consistently think about. If you think anxious thoughts, you become an anxious person. If you think grateful thoughts, you become a grateful person. If you think thoughts of possibility, you become someone who sees opportunities everywhere. This is not philosophy. This is neuroscience. Your brain has something called the reticular activating system, a bundle of nerves at the base of your brainstem that acts as a filter. It determines what information from the overwhelming sea of stimuli around you actually reaches your conscious awareness. And here's the key. It filters based on what you've told it is important. When you clearly define a goal, when you ask with specificity and intention, you're essentially programming this filter. You're saying, "This matters. Show me everything related to this." And suddenly, you start noticing things you never noticed before.
The business opportunity that was always there, but you couldn't see it. The person who could help you, who you walked past 100 times. The solution to your problem, hiding in plain sight. The Stoics called this living with clear vision, seeing reality as it actually is, not distorted by fear or desire. When you define what you want clearly, your mind becomes magnetic, not in a supernatural sense, but in a very real, practical sense. Goals pull you toward them like gravity. When you don't have clear goals, you drift. Every option seems equally valid or equally meaningless. You're reactive, responding to whatever demands your attention in the moment. But when you have a clear target, a defined harbor, as Seneca would say, everything changes. Decisions become easier because you have a framework for making them. Does this move me toward my goal or away from it? Opportunities become obvious because you're looking for them with focused attention. Obstacles become surmountable because you have a reason to persist that's stronger than the difficulty. This is the power of mental magnetism.
Epictetus taught his students, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. First, define it clearly in your mind. See it, know it, believe it. Then, act accordingly. The mind leads, the body follows. But here's where most people go wrong. They define their goals vaguely. I want to be successful. I want to be happy. I want more money. These aren't goals. These are wishes. They're too vague to create any real magnetic pull. The Stoic practice of mental clarity demands precision. Not, I want to be successful, but I want to build a business that serves 1,000 customers and generates enough income to support my family while giving me time for what matters. Not, I want to be happy, but I want to cultivate peace of mind by practicing daily reflection, spending time in nature, and living according to my values. Not, I want more money, but
I want to increase my income by developing skills in X, Y, and Z, then offering those skills in service of others. Do you see the difference? Vague goals create vague results. Precise goals create magnetic focus. And here's another critical insight from Stoic philosophy. You must visualize not just the outcome, but the process.
The Stoics practiced what they called premeditation malorum, the premeditation of evils. They would imagine all the things that could go wrong, all the obstacles they might face, not to become pessimistic, but to prepare themselves mentally. Marcus Aurelius will remind himself each morning, "Today I will encounter ingratitude, arrogance, dishonesty, jealousy, and selfishness. None of this will surprise me because I have considered it beforehand." By imagining obstacles in advance, he robbed them of their power to shock or derail him. You should do the same with your goals. Visualize yourself succeeding, yes, but also visualize yourself facing difficulties and persisting anyway. See yourself tired but continuing. See yourself discouraged but recovering. See yourself failing and learning and trying again. This makes your mental picture complete. It makes your mind magnetic not just to the destination, but to the journey. And here's what happens when you do this consistently. Your brain begins treating your imagined future as real, as something to be achieved, not just dreamed about. The neural pathways strengthen, the habits form, the identity shifts. You begin acting like someone who already has what you're asking for, because in your mind, on some level, you already do.
The Stoics understood this. They practiced visualization daily. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is filled with him reminding himself of who he wants to be, what he stands for, how he wants to respond to circumstances. He was programming his own mind, creating mental magnetism toward the ideal of the philosopher king. And it worked. Despite enormous pressure, despite war and plague and betrayal, he remained remarkably steady. His mind had been trained to seek wisdom and virtue like a compass seeks north. This is available to you too, not through wishful thinking, through disciplined practice. Every day, take time to clarify your vision. See it clearly, feel it emotionally. Remind yourself why it matters. Every day, prime your mind to notice opportunities and resources aligned with your goals. Every day, strengthen the neural pathways that make your desired future feel inevitable. Seneca wrote, "When a man does not know what harbor he is making for, no wind is the right wind. But when you know your harbor, when you can see it clearly in your mind, when you've imagined the journey there in detail, then every wind can be used. Every circumstance becomes raw material for progress. Your mind becomes magnetic, and you begin attracting, noticing, creating opportunities that were invisible before." Can you see your goal clearly? Not just the end point, but the journey there? Can you visualize yourself becoming the person capable of achieving it? If not, this is your work. This is where magnetic power begins, in the clarity of your own mind.
Chapter 5. The Faith of a Child, the Plans of a Philosopher. There's a paradox at the heart of Stoic success. You must plan like an adult and believe like a child. Let me explain what this means. The Stoics were rigorous planners. They were strategic thinkers. They broke down complex problems into manageable steps. They prepared for contingencies. They thought deeply about cause and effect. Marcus Aurelius, running an empire, had to master logistics, military strategy, political maneuvering. Seneca, advising emperors, had to understand human nature, rhetoric, persuasion.
These were not naive idealists floating on clouds of positive thinking. They were practical philosophers who understood that wisdom without action is worthless. So they made plans, detailed, thoughtful, strategic plans. But here's the paradox. After making those plans, after doing all the preparation and strategy and thinking, they let go. They believed like children. What does that mean? A child, when they plant a seed in the garden, doesn't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. They water it, they make sure it has sunlight, then they trust the process. They believe, with simple faith, that if they do their part, nature will do its part. This is not blind faith. This is trust in natural law, trust in cause and effect. Trust that when you plant an apple seed in good soil and care for it properly, you will eventually get an apple tree.
Not because you deserve it, not because you wished hard enough, but because that's how reality works. The Stoics called this amor fati, love of fate. They believed that the universe operates according to rational principles, that there is a natural order to things, and that when you align yourself with that order, when you do what is within your power to do excellently and consistently, the outcomes will take care of themselves. Not always the outcomes you expect, not always on your timeline, but the outcomes that are meant to be. This requires a particular kind of faith. Not religious faith necessarily, though it can include that, but faith in the process, faith in yourself, faith that your efforts matter even when you can't see immediate results. Modern life makes this kind of faith difficult. We've been trained to expect instant results, instant information, instant gratification, instant feedback. We plant a seed on Monday and want a tree by Wednesday. And when the tree doesn't appear, we assume the seed was bad, or the soil was bad, or we're bad at growing things.
So we dig it up. We plant something else. We try a different approach. We bounce from strategy to strategy, never giving anything time to actually work. This is the opposite of Stoic wisdom. The Stoics understood that real growth happens slowly, that excellence is built through small, consistent actions repeated over time, that transformation is not an event, but a process. Epictetus told his students, "No great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me that you desire a fig, I answer you that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen." This is faith. Not blind optimism, not denial of difficulty, but patient trust in the process of growth. You make your plans like an adult, carefully, strategically, with full awareness of reality and its constraints. Then, you execute those plans with the faith of a child, trusting that if you do your part consistently, reality will respond. Let me give you a story to illustrate this. Imagine a farmer who plants his fields in spring. He has made careful plans, selected the right seeds, prepared the soil, timed his planting according to the season. Now the seeds are in the ground.
What does the farmer do? He doesn't stand in the field worrying whether the seeds will grow. He doesn't dig them up to check on them. He doesn't doubt the process every time a cloud appears. He tends the field. He waters when needed. He weeds. He does his part. And he trusts. He trusts the sun to shine, the rain to fall, the earth to nourish the seeds. He has faith, not because he's naive, but because he understands how farming works. He's aligned with natural law. And at harvest time, he reaps what he has sown. This is how you should approach your goals. Make your plans carefully. Study, strategize, prepare. Do everything within your power to set yourself up for success. Then act with faith. Trust that your efforts matter. Trust that consistency compounds. Trust that if you show up every day and do the work, results will come, not because you deserve them, but because that's how reality operates. The universe rewards the steady, the persistent, the faithful, not the anxious, not the doubting, not those who plant seeds and then dig them up out of impatience.
Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not disturb yourself by imagining your whole life at once. Do not gather up in your mind all the troubles you may expect will fall upon you. But at each event, ask yourself, what is there in this that is unbearable and beyond endurance?" In other words, make your plans for the whole journey, yes, but live and act in the present moment, with faith that each step, taken well, leads to the destination. This is the balance. Adult planning, childlike faith. Strategy plus trust. Preparation plus surrender. Do your part excellently, then let go of the outcome. This is how the Stoics achieved so much while maintaining inner peace. They worked hard, incredibly hard, but they weren't attached to results in a way that destroyed their serenity. They did what was right, what was excellent, what was within their control. Then they accepted whatever happened with equanimity. And ironically, this attitude, this combination of fierce effort and calm detachment, made them more effective, not less. Because anxiety clouds judgment. Desperation leads to poor decisions. Doubt creates hesitation. But faith? Faith creates clarity, confidence, persistence.
When you truly trust the process, you can focus entirely on excellence in the present moment, knowing that the future will take care of itself. What would you do if you stopped doubting the process? What would you attempt if you truly believed that consistent, excellent effort would eventually yield results? What seeds would you plant if you trusted that harvest would come? This is not fantasy. This is Stoic realism. Reality rewards the prepared, the faithful, the persistent. Make your plans like an adult, believe in them like a child, and watch what grows.
Chapter 6: The Ocean of Abundance. Let's return to the ocean. Remember the metaphor from the beginning? You standing at the edge of an infinite ocean that contains everything you could possibly want, and you're holding a teaspoon? We need to explore this image more deeply because it reveals something profound about how we approach life. The ocean represents abundance, infinite possibility, unlimited potential. This isn't New Age wishful thinking. This is observable reality. Think about it. How many books could be written? Infinite. How many businesses could be started? Infinite. How many relationships could be formed? Infinite. How many ways could you serve others, create value, express yourself? Infinite. The limits are not in the ocean. The limits are in what you bring to collect it. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't believe in a zero-sum universe where one person's gain must be another's loss. They believed in a universe of abundance, where virtue, wisdom, and excellence could be cultivated infinitely.
Seneca wrote an essay called On the Shortness of Life, where he makes a stunning observation. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. The problem is not scarcity. The problem is waste, distraction, small thinking. We bring teaspoons to the ocean because we've been taught to think small, to not ask for too much, to be realistic, which often just means limiting your vision to what's immediately visible. But what if realistic meant recognizing the true size of the ocean? What if practical meant bringing a bigger container? The Stoics practiced something called expanding your inner citadel.
They believed that external circumstances were limited, yes, but internal capacity was virtually unlimited. You can always become wiser. You can always become more disciplined. You can always deepen your understanding, strengthen your character, expand your capability. The ocean within you is as infinite as the ocean around you. And when you realize this, something shifts. You stop competing for scraps. You stop seeing other people's success as a threat to your own. You stop thinking in terms of limited resources and start thinking in terms of unlimited creativity.
Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in the ancient world, reminded himself constantly that his true wealth was not his empire, his gold, or his palaces. His true wealth was his capacity for virtue, his ability to think clearly, his freedom to choose his response to any circumstance. These things could never be taken from him. These things could only grow. This is the abundance mindset the Stoics cultivated. Not the shallow abundance thinking that says, just believe and you'll get rich, but the deep abundance understanding that says the universe is not your enemy and scarcity is often an illusion created by limited vision. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine two people walking through the same city, same streets, same buildings, same opportunities. One person sees competition everywhere, closed doors, limited opportunities. They think, there are too many people trying to do what I want to do. The market is saturated. The good spots are taken. I'm too late. The second person sees possibility everywhere. They think, look at all these people creating value. Look at all these needs being met. Look at all these problems being solved. Where can I contribute? What unique value can I add? Same ocean, different containers. The first person brought a teaspoon and sees scarcity. The second brought a bucket and sees abundance. And here's the kicker. Both are right, because reality tends to confirm your expectations. Not through magic, but through attention and action. If you believe opportunities are scarce, you'll focus on the closed doors and miss the open windows. You'll hesitate. You'll hold back. You'll play small. If you believe opportunities are abundant, you'll look for them actively. You'll experiment. You'll take intelligent risks. You'll play big. And over time, the results will match your belief. The Stoics were masters of reframing. They understood that the same circumstance could be seen as obstacle or opportunity, depending on your perspective. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This is abundance thinking at its finest. The obstacle isn't blocking your path, it is the path. The difficulty isn't preventing your growth, it is your growth. You don't need more opportunities. You need to see the opportunities in what you already have. You don't need more time. You need to use the time you have more intentionally. You don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful. This is what it means to bring a bigger container to the ocean.
Not necessarily more external tools, though those can help, but more internal capacity, more vision, more creativity, more courage. Seneca tells a story about how we treat our time. He says most people act like they'll live forever, wasting days on trivial pursuits, mindless entertainment, meaningless arguments. But if you truly understood that your time was limited, that each day is a precious, non-renewable resource drawn from a finite well, you would treat it like the treasure it is. The same is true for all of life's opportunities. They're not scarce, but they are time-sensitive. They appear and disappear. They require you to be ready, to be watching, to be willing to act. The ocean is always there, but the tide doesn't wait for you to decide to bring a bigger bucket. So here's the practice. Start noticing abundance. Actively look for it. When someone else succeeds, instead of feeling threatened, get curious.
What did they do? What can I learn? How does their success prove that success is possible? When you face a limitation, instead of seeing a wall, look for the door. What creative solution exists? What resource have I overlooked? What skill could I develop? When you feel stuck, instead of believing you're trapped, ask, what am I not seeing? What assumption am I making that might not be true? This is not positive thinking. This is Stoic realism.
The Stoics were not optimists in the naive sense. They didn't believe everything would magically work out. But they also weren't pessimists. They didn't believe the universe was against them. They were rational observers who understood that reality is neutral and perspective is power. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The ocean doesn't care what size container you bring. It doesn't judge. It doesn't withhold. It simply is. Infinite, available, abundant. The question is always, what have you brought to receive it? And here's the beautiful thing about expanding your container. It's not selfish. It's not greedy. It's not taking from others. When you bring a bucket instead of a teaspoon, you don't diminish the ocean. You don't take from anyone else's share. You simply take what you're capable of carrying, and the ocean remains infinite. In fact, the more you receive, the more you can give. The more value you create, the more you can share. The more wisdom you gain, the more you can teach. Abundance begets abundance.
The Stoics believed in serving the common good. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about his duty to his fellow human beings. Seneca gave away vast amounts of his wealth. Epictetus taught students for free. They understood that personal excellence and social contribution were not in conflict. They were complementary. When you become more capable, you become more useful. When you receive more, you can give more. When you expand your container, you expand what you can pour out for others. This is the truth about the ocean. It's not just for you, it's for everyone. And there's enough for everyone who's willing to show up with intention and receive. But most people never do. Most people stand at the shore, watching others fill their buckets, wondering why life isn't fair.
Meanwhile, the ocean whispers, "Come closer. Bring something bigger. The water is here. I am not your enemy. I am not withholding. I am waiting for you to be ready to receive." Imagine yourself at that shore right now. Feel the sand beneath your feet. Smell the salt air. Hear the waves. Look at the teaspoon in your hand. Now imagine setting it down. Imagine walking back, finding something larger. A cup, a jug, a bucket, whatever you can carry. Imagine returning to the water's edge with this larger vessel. The ocean hasn't changed, but your capacity has. This is available to you right now, not someday, right now. The only question is, are you ready to trade your teaspoon for something bigger? Are you ready to see abundance where you once saw scarcity? Are you ready to receive what you've been asking for? The ocean is infinite. Your capacity is expandable. And the universe is waiting to see what you'll bring.
Chapter 7. Ask intelligently. Clarity creates power. There's a way to ask that opens doors, and there's a way to ask that guarantees you'll remain stuck exactly where you are. The difference is not in how loud you ask, or how often, or how desperately. The difference is in clarity. The Stoics understood that confused questions receive confused answers. Vague intentions produce vague results. Unclear requests get unclear responses from the universe, from other people, from your own subconscious mind. Seneca wrote, "If one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable." You've heard this quote before, but let's go deeper. Why is no wind favorable when you don't know your port? Because without a clear destination, every wind seems like the wrong wind. Every opportunity feels like a distraction. Every choice is equally valid or equally meaningless. You become paralyzed by options, overwhelmed by possibilities, frozen by the fear of choosing wrong. But when you know exactly where you're going, when your destination is crystal clear in your mind, then you can evaluate every wind. Does this take me toward my port or away from it? You can use headwinds by tacking strategically. You can harness crosswinds to your advantage. You can ride tailwinds with confidence.
Clarity creates power, not by changing external circumstances, but by organizing your internal resources around a single, defined point. Think about sunlight. Diffused sunlight is pleasant, warm, gentle, but it won't start a fire. Take that same sunlight and focus it through a magnifying glass, concentrating all those scattered rays into a single point, and suddenly you can ignite wood. Same light, same energy, but focused into a point, it becomes powerful enough to transform matter. This is what clarity does to your intentions. When you ask intelligently, with precision, with specificity, with absolute clarity about what you want, you concentrate all your mental and emotional energy into a single point, and that concentrated energy has transformative power. So how do you ask intelligently? The Stoics practiced rigorous self-examination. They journaled. They questioned their own thinking. They demanded clarity from themselves first, before expecting clarity from the world.
Marcus Aurelius filled notebooks with questions he asked himself. What is my purpose today? What virtue should I practice? How should I respond to this person? What is within my control in this situation? These weren't casual questions. They were precision instruments for cutting through confusion and reaching truth. You need to develop the same practice. When you say you want something, interrogate that desire. What exactly do I want? Not in general terms, but specific, measurable, concrete terms. Not, I want to be successful, but I want to build a business that generates X revenue by Y date while allowing me Z lifestyle. Not, I want to be healthy, but I want to have the energy to play with my children, the strength to hike without pain, and the confidence that comes from disciplined self-care. Not, I want to be hacky, but I want to experience daily peace of mind, meaningful work, deep relationships, and the satisfaction of living according to my values.
Do you see how much more powerful the specific versions are? They give your mind something to work with, something to visualize, something to plan for, something to recognize when it appears. But intelligent asking goes deeper than just specificity. You must also ask, why do I want this? This is critical. Because if you don't understand your true motivation, you might achieve your stated goal and still feel empty. The Stoics distinguished between things that are genuinely good and things that only appear good. Power, wealth, fame, these can be good or bad depending on how they're used and why they're pursued. But wisdom, justice, courage, self-discipline, these are always good. They have intrinsic value. So when you ask for something external, examine why you want it. Do you want money for security, for freedom, for status, for the ability to help others? Each of these motivations will lead you to use money differently.
Do you want success for validation, for meaning, for impact, for the joy of mastery? Each motivation will create a different experience of success. Understanding your why clarifies your what, and it also helps you recognize when you're asking for the wrong thing. Maybe you think you want $1 million, but what you really want is freedom from financial anxiety. There might be many paths to that freedom, not all requiring $1 million. Maybe you think you want to be famous, but what you really want is to feel significant. There are many ways to matter that don't require public recognition. The Stoics were masters at getting to the root of desire. They would trace every want back to its source. I want X. Why? Because it will give me Y. Why do I want Y? Because it will make me feel Z. And often they discovered that Z, the core desire, could be cultivated directly through virtue and wisdom without needing X at all. This doesn't mean you shouldn't pursue external goals. It means you should pursue them intelligently, understanding what you truly seek. Epictetus taught, first, say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Notice the order. First, define what you would be, not what you would have, but what you would become.
Because who you are determines what you attract and what you do with what you receive. If you become wise, you'll make wise use of resources. If you become disciplined, you'll achieve disciplined goals. If you become generous, you'll create generous outcomes. So ask intelligently by asking about being, not just having. What kind of person do I need to become to achieve this goal? What character traits need to be developed? What weaknesses need to be addressed? What skills need to be learned? When you frame your asking this way, you shift from passive wishing to active becoming. You're no longer just hoping the universe delivers. You're preparing yourself to receive and handle what you've asked for. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. He would write about the kind of emperor he wanted to be, not just the things he wanted to accomplish. He wanted to be just, so he studied justice. He wanted to be calm in crisis, so he practiced emotional regulation. He wanted to be wise, so he read philosophy and consulted with teachers. He asked intelligently by understanding that external achievements must be matched by internal development.
Here's a practice for you. Take whatever you think you want right now. Write it down clearly. Then ask yourself these questions. What specifically do I want? Be concrete and measurable. Why do I want this? Dig for the real motivation. What will having this give me? The feeling or state you're actually seeking. Who do I need to become to achieve this? The character development required. What's within my control about this goal? Focus on what you can actually influence. What's outside my control? Identify what you must accept. If I never achieve this, can I still live well? Test whether your well-being is conditional. These questions do two things. First, they clarify your asking. They turn vague wishes into intelligent requests. Second, they reveal whether you're asking for the right things. Sometimes you'll discover that what you thought you wanted isn't what you actually need. The Stoics believed that asking intelligently was part of wisdom. It was a skill to be practiced, refined, developed over time. Seneca wrote hundreds of letters where he examined questions deeply. What is the good life? What is friendship? What is death?
How should we face adversity? He wasn't just musing, he was asking intelligently, with precision, seeking clarity about what truly matters.
And the clearer he became in his asking, the clearer his life became in its expression. This is available to you. Every day, you can practice asking more intelligently. Not just, what do I want? But what do I truly want, and why, and who must I become to receive it? Not just, how do I get X, but is X what I really need, and what's within my control about achieving it? Not just, when will things get better, but what can I do today to move toward better, regardless of circumstances? Intelligent asking cuts through confusion. It eliminates wasted effort. It focuses your energy where it can actually create change. And here's what happens when you practice this consistently. You stop chasing mirages. You stop investing energy in things that will never satisfy you. You stop asking for things that aren't aligned with who you really are or who you want to become. And you start asking for what you actually need, what actually serves your growth, what actually moves you toward a life of meaning and virtue. Clarity creates power. Confusion creates paralysis. Which are you creating with the quality of your questions? If you could only ask for one thing today, one thing that you had to define with absolute precision and clarity, what would it be? Don't rush this. Sit with it. Examine it. Question it. Ask intelligently. And watch as the answer reveals not just what you want, but who you're becoming.
Chapter 8. Ask with faith. The strength of belief. There's a kind of asking that comes from desperation. A grasping, anxious, needy asking. The kind that repels rather than attracts. The kind that undermines itself with its own urgency. And then there's another kind of asking. Calm, confident, expectant. Rooted not in need, but in readiness. The Stoics understood that the energy behind your asking matters as much as the clarity of what you ask for. You can have perfect clarity about your goal, but if you ask from a place of fear, doubt, or desperate need, you sabotage yourself. Why? Because fear clouds judgment. Doubt creates hesitation. Desperation leads to poor decisions. But faith, genuine, grounded faith, creates a steady platform for action. This is not blind faith, not wishful thinking, not denial of difficulty. This is what the Stoics called amor fati, love of fate. The belief that whatever happens, you have the inner resources to handle it. The trust that the universe is not your enemy, even when circumstances are difficult. The confidence that if you do what's within your power with virtue and excellence, the outcomes will be what they should be.
Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs?" Read that again. Whatever comes to you is woven in the pattern of your destiny. It fits your needs. Perhaps not your wants, but your needs for growth, learning, development. This is faith. Not that everything will be easy, not that you'll get everything you want exactly when you want it, but that everything that happens can be used, can be learned from, can be integrated into your growth. This kind of faith changes how you ask. When you ask from desperation, you're essentially saying, "I'm incomplete without this. I'm not okay as I am. I need this external thing to make me whole." That's a weak position. It makes you fragile. It makes you clingy. It makes you likely to grab at opportunities prematurely or hold on to the wrong things too long. But when you ask with faith, you're saying, "I'm whole now, and this would be a welcome addition to my life. I'm ready for it. I'm prepared for it. And whether it comes today or next year or never, I'll be fine."
That's a strong position. It makes you resilient. It makes you patient. It makes you able to recognize the right opportunities and take them with confidence. The paradox is this: when you need something desperately, you're less likely to get it. When you want something but don't need it for your okayness, you're more likely to attract it.
Why? Because desperate energy is repulsive. It makes people uncomfortable. It clouds your thinking. It makes you try too hard and push too forcefully. But faith energy is attractive. It makes people want to be around you. It clarifies your thinking. It allows you to act from strength rather than weakness. Seneca observed this in his own life and in others. He wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." He had faith that difficulties served a purpose, that challenges were not punishments, but refinement. And this faith allowed him to face enormous challenges, political intrigue, exile, eventual execution, with remarkable equanimity. He asked for wisdom, and he trusted that whatever experiences came his way were opportunities to develop that wisdom. So how do you cultivate this kind of faith? First, you must ground it in something real.
The Stoics grounded their faith in several key beliefs. They believed in their own capacity to choose their response to any circumstance. No matter what happened externally, they retained the freedom to decide how to think about it and how to act. They believed that virtue was its own reward, that living excellently was valuable in itself, regardless of outcomes. They believed in the rational order of the universe, that even when they couldn't see the pattern, there was one, that nature operated according to law, not chaos. These beliefs provided a foundation for faith. Not faith that they would get everything they wanted, but faith that they could handle whatever came. You need a similar foundation. What do you believe in that's unshakable? Your own capacity to learn and adapt? Your values? The love of people who matter? The meaningfulness of your work? Your connection to something larger than yourself? Find that foundation. Name it. Reinforce it. Because faith without foundation is just wishful thinking. But faith rooted in something real is unshakable. Second, you must practice trusting yourself. The Stoics practiced daily discipline specifically to build self-trust.
They made promises to themselves and kept them. They set standards and lived by them. They said they would do something, then did it, not for others' approval, but to prove to themselves that they were reliable. This builds faith, not faith in magic or luck or the universe's benevolence, faith in your own character. When you trust yourself, when you know you'll show up, do the work, persist through difficulty, learn from failure, asking becomes easier. You're not asking the universe to do everything for you. You're asking for opportunities that you trust yourself to make the most of. Marcus Aurelius practiced this rigorously. He would set intentions each morning, then review his actions each evening. Did I live according to my values? Did I respond with virtue? Did I do what I said I would do? This daily practice built unshakable self-trust, which allowed him to ask with faith and act with confidence. Third, you must let go of attachment to specific outcomes. This is perhaps the hardest part of faith, but it's essential. The Stoics distinguished between preferred indifference and genuine goods. Wealth, health, success, these are preferred indifference. You prefer to have them rather than not, but they're not essential to your well-being. They're outside your complete control, so you can't base your happiness on them.
Wisdom, justice, courage, self-discipline. These are genuine goods. They have intrinsic value.
They're entirely within your control, and they're sufficient for happiness. When you ask with faith, you ask for what you prefer, but you remain unattached to getting it in exactly the way you imagine. You say, I want this outcome, and I'll work toward it with everything I have. But I trust that if something different happens, that will be okay too, perhaps even better. This isn't resignation. This is strategic detachment. It allows you to pursue goals with full effort while maintaining inner peace regardless of outcomes. Epictetus told his students, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. That's faith in action. Full engagement with what you control, full acceptance of what you don't. Here's a practice. When you ask for something, when you set a goal, make a plan, declare an intention, follow it with this statement. I will do everything within my power to achieve this, and I trust that whatever results from my excellent effort will be what should be. Feel the difference in that statement.
You're committing fully to the process. You're not holding back or hedging, you're going all in. But you're also releasing attachment to a specific outcome. You're trusting the process. This is asking with faith. And here's what happens when you practice this. You become steady, unshakable. The anxiety that comes from needing things to be a certain way dissolves. You make better decisions because you're not operating from desperation. You see opportunities more clearly because you're not clouded by fear. You persist longer because you're not devastated by setbacks. You adapt more easily because you're not rigidly attached to one specific path. And ironically, you achieve more. Not because faith magically changes reality, but because faith changes you. It makes you more effective, more resilient, more able to navigate difficulty and seize opportunity. The universe doesn't give you what you wish for. It gives you what you're ready for.
And readiness is demonstrated by faith, by the calm confidence that says, I'm prepared, I'm capable, I trust myself and the process. Whatever comes, I'll handle it well. The Stoics faced wars, plagues, political intrigue, personal tragedy. They experienced as much hardship as success, as much loss as gain. But they maintained faith throughout. Not naive optimism, not pretending things were fine when they weren't, but deep, abiding trust that they would be okay, that their character could not be touched by external circumstances, that virtue was always available, regardless of fortune. This is the kind of faith that creates unshakable strength. Ask with this faith, not, please let this work out because I'll be destroyed if it doesn't, but I'm ready for this. I trust myself to handle whatever comes. I'm asking from abundance, not lack. I'm open to receiving, and I'm okay if it takes time. That's power. That's faith. And that's how you ask in a way that the universe can answer.
Chapter 9. The Stoic Practice of Receiving. There's one more piece to this puzzle that most people overlook entirely. They learn to ask clearly, they develop faith, they take action, they do everything right, but then they fail at the final step, receiving. Receiving is an art, a practice, a skill that must be cultivated. And it's harder than you think, because receiving requires something most people struggle with, humility. Not the false humility that says, I don't deserve good things, but the genuine humility that says, I cannot control exactly when or how things come. I must be open, patient, and ready to accept them in whatever form they arrive. The Stoics understood this deeply. They practiced what they called premeditatio malorum, anticipating difficulties. But they also practice something less discussed, preparing to receive good fortune without being corrupted by it. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself not to be changed by success, not to become arrogant, not to lose his virtue when things went well. Because receiving is dangerous. When you finally get what you've been asking for, there's a temptation to become attached to it, to identify with it, to let it define you. And the moment you do that, you become fragile, because anything that can be given can be taken away.
So the Stoic practice of receiving has two parts. First, be open to receiving in unexpected forms. Often, what you asked for arrives, but not in the package you expected, not from the direction you were watching, not at the time you anticipated. If you're rigidly attached to your specific vision of how things should unfold, you'll miss opportunities that are right in front of you. Seneca wrote, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." But you have to recognize the opportunity when it appears, and it might not look like what you imagined. Maybe you asked for a romantic relationship, and you meet someone wonderful, but they're not your usual type. Do you receive the gift or reject it because it doesn't match your expectation? Maybe you asked for a career breakthrough, and you're offered a position that's not quite what you envisioned, but it provides exactly the learning opportunity you need. Do you receive it or hold out for the fantasy? Maybe you asked for peace, and what arrives is a difficult situation that forces you to develop inner strength. Do you recognize that as the answer to your prayer, or resist it because it came wrapped in hardship? Receiving requires discernment. Not every opportunity is right, but not every opportunity looks like what you expected either.
The Stoics practiced staying alert, aware, open. They looked for the good in what appeared rather than rejecting it because it didn't match their preconceptions. Second, receive with gratitude, not entitlement. When something you've asked for arrives, it's tempting to think, "Finally, I deserved this. It should have come sooner." That's entitlement, and entitlement destroys the gift. Gratitude, on the other hand, honors the gift, amplifies it, makes you more likely to use it well and attract more good things. The Stoics practiced daily gratitude. Marcus Aurelius would list the people he was grateful for, the lessons he'd learned, the experiences that shaped him. Not because he was trying to manifest more abundance, but because gratitude was part of living virtuously. It was recognizing reality accurately, that he had received much, that he was fortunate, that he owed debts of honor to teachers, friends, family. This kept him humble. It kept him grounded. It prevented success from corrupting his character. When you receive something you've been asking for, pause. Before celebrating, before moving on to the next goal, take a moment to feel genuine gratitude.
Not just thank you for giving me this thing, but deeper. Thank you for the journey that prepared me to receive this. Thank you for the challenges that built my capacity. Thank you for the patience required. Thank you for the lesson this represents. This kind of gratitude does something powerful. It completes the circuit. You asked, you prepared, you received. And now you acknowledge the cycle with thanks. This makes you ready to ask again, to receive again, to continue growing. Without gratitude, receiving becomes hollow. You get what you asked for and immediately feel empty, already looking for the next thing. With gratitude, receiving becomes fulfilling. Each thing received is savored, appreciated, fully experienced before moving on. But there's an even deeper level to the Stoic practice of receiving. The ultimate practice is this: receive everything as if you chose it. Marcus Aurelius called this amor fati, love of fate. Whatever happens, receive it as if you would have chosen it yourself if you had perfect wisdom and perfect perspective. The job rejection? Receive it. Perhaps it's saving you from a situation that would have been wrong for you.
The relationship ending? Receive it. Perhaps it's opening space for growth you couldn't have experienced otherwise. The setback in your plans? Receive it. Perhaps it's redirecting you towards something better. This doesn't mean pretending to be happy about painful things. The Stoics felt pain, grief, disappointment. They were human, but it means accepting reality completely, not wasting energy wishing things were different, not fighting against what is. Epictetus taught, "Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happen the way it happens. Then you will be happy." This is the deepest level of receiving. You receive not only the obviously good things, but everything. You trust that even what appears bad might be serving your ultimate growth. And you receive it all with equanimity, with grace, with the understanding that you cannot always see the bigger pattern, but there is one. Here's what this looks like in practice. You've been working toward a goal for months. You asked clearly, you prepared faithfully, you took action consistently. And then, it doesn't happen. The opportunity falls through. The outcome doesn't materialize.
The automatic response is disappointment, frustration, doubt. But the Stoic practice of receiving says, I receive this too. I don't understand it yet, but I receive it. Perhaps this is protecting me from something I couldn't see. Perhaps this is redirecting me. Perhaps this is teaching me patience or resilience or humility. I receive this as part of my path. This doesn't mean giving up. It means accepting what is while remaining open to what's next. And here's what's remarkable. When you practice receiving everything, success and failure, pleasure and pain, gain and loss with equal acceptance, you become incredibly powerful. Not because you're numb or detached, but because you're no longer fragile. You're no longer dependent on specific outcomes for your okayness. You can pursue goals with full intensity while maintaining inner peace regardless of results. You can want things without being enslaved by wanting them. You can ask boldly because you know you'll be fine whether you receive exactly what you ask for or something different. This is the paradox of Stoic receiving. When you're willing to receive anything, even what you didn't ask for, you're finally ready to receive what you did ask for.
Because you're receiving from abundance, not need. From strength, not weakness. From openness, not grasping. Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present, without anxious dependence upon the future." Receiving is a present moment practice. Right now, what are you receiving? Not just the obvious things, but the subtle things. The breath in your lungs, the thoughts in your mind. This moment, exactly as it is. Can you receive all of it? Can you be open to good things arriving in unexpected forms? Can you feel genuine gratitude for what's already here? Can you accept even difficulties as part of your path? This is the art of receiving. And when you master it, you discover something profound. You've been receiving all along. Every moment, every experience, every challenge and opportunity. The universe has been answering your asking since before you knew how to ask clearly. The question was never whether it would answer. The question was only whether you would recognize the answer when it arrived.
Chapter 10. The Art of Contentment. Getting everything by needing nothing. We've traveled far together, from the first act of asking, through faith and discipline and receiving, through the ocean of abundance and the practice of clarity. And now we arrive at the final paradox, the ultimate teaching, the place where the journey completes itself in a way that changes everything. The art of contentment. Here's what the Stoics discovered and what mystics of every tradition have found throughout human history. The person who needs nothing gets everything. Not because the universe rewards them with material abundance, though that often happens, but because when you need nothing external for your okayness, you already have everything that matters. This is the pinnacle of Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the ancient world, wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." The man who had everything, power, wealth, status, influence, understood that none of it was necessary for happiness. The things that mattered were entirely within his control. His thoughts, his character, his response to circumstances.
This is not a philosophy of renunciation. The Stoics didn't reject the world or withdraw from it. Marcus Aurelius didn't give up his throne. Seneca didn't give away all his wealth. They remained engaged with life, with work, with relationships. But they held it all lightly. They enjoyed what they had without being enslaved by it. They pursued goals without being dependent on achieving them. They engaged fully while maintaining inner freedom. This is contentment, not passivity, not resignation, not settling for less, but the deep satisfaction that comes from being complete within yourself. Think about how radically this changes your relationship with desire. Most people live in a constant state of lack. They believe happiness is just beyond reach, if only they had more money, or found the right partner, or achieved that next goal. So they're always striving, always chasing, always slightly dissatisfied with now because they're fixated on later. And here's the tragedy. When they get what they wanted, it doesn't satisfy them the way they expected. The new job is stressful, the relationship has problems, the money brings new worries. So they set a new goal, chase a new thing, believe that this time when they get that thing, then they'll finally be happy. It's an endless treadmill, a hamster wheel of perpetual dissatisfaction. The Stoics stepped off the wheel entirely, not by giving up on goals, but by finding contentment first, then pursuing goals from that foundation. Epictetus taught, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Read that carefully.
Wealth is not about what you have. It's about what you need. The person who needs very little is wealthier than the billionaire who needs constantly more. Because the person with few needs is satisfied, free, content. They have enough. And from that foundation of contentment, they can create, build, achieve, not because they need to, but because they want to, because it's meaningful, because it serves others. This is getting everything by needing nothing. When you don't need success, you're free to pursue excellence without anxiety. When you don't need approval, you're free to be authentic without fear. When you don't need control, you're free to adapt to circumstances fluidly. When you don't need life to be different than it is, you're free to engage fully with life as it is. This is the ultimate freedom the Stoics sought. Not freedom from responsibility or difficulty, but freedom within any circumstance. Freedom that comes from inner sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius faced wars, plagues, betrayals, the death of children. He experienced as much pain and loss as joy and success. But his journals reveal a man who maintained remarkable equanimity throughout. Why? Because his happiness wasn't conditional on circumstances. It was rooted in his commitment to virtue, to clear thinking, to responding excellently regardless of what happened.
He wrote, "He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe." That's the key. Harmony with yourself. Internal alignment. When your thoughts, values, and actions align, when who you are inside matches how you show up outside, you experience contentment. Not because your circumstances are perfect, but because you're integrated, whole, at peace with yourself. And from that place of internal harmony, external harmony often follows. Not because you've manipulated reality, but because you're no longer creating internal conflict that spills into your outer world. Think about it. Most external problems are reflections of internal chaos. Relationship conflicts often stem from our own unexamined issues. Career struggles often reflect unclear values or misaligned priorities. Financial stress often comes from unconscious spending patterns or confused beliefs about money. When you achieve inner harmony, when you become content with who you are while still committed to growth, many external problems simply dissolve. Not all of them. Life is still life. But the ones that were self-created, the ones that came from internal conflict, those fall away. And what remains becomes more manageable.
Because you're approaching it from groundedness rather than desperation, from wholeness rather than fragmentation, from contentment rather than endless striving. This is what it means to get everything by needing nothing. You still want things. You still pursue goals. You still create and build and contribute. But you do it from fullness, not emptiness, from joy, not lack, from choice, not compulsion. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." The poorest person is the one who has much but wants more, who achieves one goal and immediately dismisses it, already hungry for the next thing. The wealthiest person is the one who looks at their life, whatever it contains, and feels genuine sufficiency. This is enough. I am enough. This moment is enough. Not because they've given up on growth, but because they've discovered that growth happens most powerfully from a foundation of contentment. When you're content, you're not desperate. When you're not desperate, you make better decisions. When you make better decisions, you create better outcomes. It's a virtuous cycle. And it all starts with the radical act of being satisfied now. Not with everything, not pretending problems don't exist, but satisfied with the core fact of your existence, grateful for the opportunity to be alive, to think, to choose, to grow. This is what the Stoics practice daily.
Gratitude for what is. Acceptance of what cannot be changed. Excellent effort toward what can be influenced. And through it all, contentment with the process itself. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning to be grateful for being alive, to appreciate his capacity to think, to reason, to choose virtue. Not after he achieved something, not if circumstances were pleasant, but simply because he was alive and capable of living well. That's contentment. And from that contentment, he ruled an empire. He made countless decisions. He faced enormous challenges, but he did it all from a place of inner sufficiency. He needed nothing external to be okay. Therefore, he could engage with everything external effectively. Here's a practice for cultivating this contentment. Each morning, before you pursue any goal, before you check any list, before you start striving for anything, pause. Ask yourself, if nothing changes today, if I achieve nothing new, if I only maintain what already is, can I be content? Not resigned, not giving up,
but genuinely at peace with the possibility that today might simply be a day of being, not becoming? If the answer is no, if your okayness depends on achieving something today, you're in a dangerous place.
You're fragile. You're at the mercy of outcomes you can't control. But if the answer is yes, if you can genuinely say, I'm okay right now, as I am, and anything I accomplish today is bonus, you're in a powerful place. You're free. You're grounded. You're ready to pursue excellence without being enslaved by outcomes. This doesn't mean you become passive or unmotivated. The Stoics were incredibly productive. Marcus Aurelius managed an empire. Seneca wrote volumes. Epictetus taught thousands. But they did it from contentment, not desperation. From fullness, not lack. And that made them more effective, not less. Because contentment creates clarity. Clarity creates focus. Focus creates results. When you're content, you're not scattered across 100 anxious desires. You can focus your energy on what truly matters. When you're content, you're not paralyzed by fear of failure. You can take risks because you know you'll be okay regardless. When you're content, you're not exhausted by constant striving. You have energy for sustained effort because you're not fighting against yourself. This is the final lesson, the completion of the circle. You started by learning to ask clearly, specifically, with intelligence and faith. You learn to align yourself, your thoughts, emotions, and actions with what you're asking for. You learn to bring a bigger container to the ocean of abundance. You learn to receive with humility and gratitude. And now, finally, you learn that the ultimate power comes from needing none of it. From being so complete within yourself that everything you receive is a gift, not a necessity. From being so content with who you are that who you become is an adventure, not a desperate quest for validation. From being so at peace now that the future becomes a canvas for creation, not a source of anxiety. This is how you get whatever you want, the Stoic way. Not by grasping, by letting go. Not by needing, by being sufficient. Not by chasing, by becoming worthy. And the beautiful irony is this: when you reach this place of contentment, when you truly need nothing external for your okayness, life begins offering you more than you ever imagined. Not because you've mastered some cosmic law, but because you've mastered yourself. And a person who has mastered themselves is capable of handling anything, creating anything, achieving anything. Not for validation, not from desperation, but from wholeness, from the deep, unshakable contentment that says, I am enough, this moment is enough, and from this sufficiency, I choose to create something beautiful.
So here we are, at the end of this journey, which is really a beginning. You came here perhaps seeking a formula, a method for getting what you want, and you found something deeper. You found a philosophy of being, a way of approaching life that transforms not just what you have, but who you are. The Stoics understood something profound. The quality of your life is determined not by what happens to you, but by who you become in response to what happens. You cannot control whether you'll be rich or poor, healthy or sick, praised or criticized, successful or defeated by the world's standards. But you can control whether you'll be wise or foolish, virtuous or corrupt, peaceful or anxious, content or perpetually dissatisfied. And in the end, those internal qualities determine everything.
Marcus Aurelius, in his final years, reflecting on a life of enormous responsibility and achievement, wrote simply, "Dwell on the beauty of life. Watch the stars and see yourself running with them." Not dwell on what you've achieved, not measure your success by what you've accumulated, but dwell on the beauty of life itself. Your participation in the cosmic dance, your ability to think, to choose, to grow. This is enough. This has always been enough. And from this enoughness, everything else flows. So let me leave you with this. Ask for what you want. Ask clearly. Ask intelligently. Ask with faith. Prepare yourself to receive it. Align your thoughts, emotions, and actions with your stated desires. Show up to the ocean of life with the biggest container you can carry. But most importantly, become someone who doesn't need any of it. Become someone so complete, so content, so aligned with virtue and wisdom that whether you get what you asked for or something different, you'll be more than okay. You'll be free. And from that freedom, you'll discover that you already have everything that truly matters. The capacity to think clearly, to choose nobly, to act excellently, to love fully, to face difficulty with courage, to treat others with justice, to maintain peace within yourself regardless of external chaos. These things cannot be taken from you, cannot be lost, cannot depreciate or decay. These things are yours, now and always, as long as you choose to cultivate them. This is the Stoic way, not a method for getting stuff, but a path to becoming someone who doesn't need stuff to be whole. And ironically, wonderfully, mysteriously, that person often ends up with more than they ever imagined, not because they chased it, but because they became worthy of it. Not because they needed it, but because they were ready for it. Not because they grasped desperately, but because they opened their hands and allowed life to fill them. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. You are free when you need nothing you don't have. You are free when you can face any circumstance with equanimity. You are free when your happiness depends on your character, not your circumstances. This freedom is available to you right now, not after you achieve your goals, not when circumstances improve, right now. It's available in this breath, in this moment, in this choice to see clearly, think rationally, act virtuously. Everything else, the achievements, the relationships, the abundance, is simply what flows naturally from a free person living freely."
So ask, act, trust. Let go. And in the letting go, discover that you were never really lacking anything at all. You were whole from the beginning. You just needed to remember. The ancient Stoics would end their philosophical discussions by returning to daily life, to the work that needed doing, to the relationships that needed tending, to the small, ordinary moments that make up a life. Because philosophy isn't meant to be discussed only in high-minded conversations. It's meant to be lived, practiced, embodied in every mundane moment. So as you return to your life, carry this with you. You are enough. This moment is enough. You have everything you need to begin. The ocean is waiting. Not someday, now. The question is only, what will you bring to receive it? And more importantly,
Who will you become in the process? The Stoics knew that the journey changes you more than the destination ever could. That who you become while pursuing what you want matters more than whether you get it. That the person capable of achieving great things is worth more than the great things themselves. So pursue excellence, cultivate virtue, practice wisdom daily.
Ask for what you want boldly. Work for it faithfully. Receive it gratefully. Hold it lightly. And through it all, maintain the inner fortress that no circumstance can touch. The fortress of a clear mind, a virtuous character, a peaceful heart. This is how you get whatever you want, the Stoic way, not by having everything, but by needing nothing. Not by controlling the universe, but by mastering yourself. Not by endless striving, but by profound contentment. And from that contentment, creating a life so full, so meaningful, so aligned with what truly matters, that you look back one day and realize you got exactly what you needed. Perhaps not what you originally asked for, but something better. You got yourself, whole, free, unshakable. And that, after all, was always the real treasure. The Stoics understood the ultimate success is becoming someone who can handle both success and failure with equal grace. Someone who can enjoy abundance without being corrupted by it. Someone who can endure scarcity without being diminished by it. Someone who has so mastered themselves that external circumstances become irrelevant to their fundamental okayness. That person has everything. That person is free.
That person is you when you choose to walk this path. So walk it. Not perfectly, the Stoics didn't claim perfection, but consistently, daily, with commitment to growth. Each morning, remind yourself what you value. Each evening, review how you lived. Each moment, choose the excellent response. This is the practice. This is the path. This is how you get whatever you want, by becoming someone who doesn't need it. And in that paradox lies all the wisdom of the ages. Ask, and you shall receive. Not always what you expected, but always what you're ready for. And when you're ready for everything, when you've done the inner work to become genuinely content, genuinely free, genuinely whole, you discover that everything was already yours. You just had to become someone who could see it, someone who could receive it, someone who could hold it without being held by it. That someone is waiting inside you, not in the future, now, in this breath, in this moment, in this choice. Choose wisely, choose well, choose freedom, and watch as everything you ever wanted finds its way to you. Not because you chased it, but because you became worthy of it.